Hey guys, how are we doing tonight? Good evening. Sorry I'm a little late. I'm a little late than our scheduled time normally, but I was even later than normal. So welcome. Welcome in. Welcome in, guys. It's been a busy day for me. Hopefully it's been a busy day for you guys. Yeah, let's go Ohio State. I wonder if Vincent's watching the game. We went to be back in time for the game. He's probably running towards the TV right now as we speak. I should have worn something Ohio State. I guess I have like gray on. That could work. Like that could work. Gray with black a little bit. Just need a little red. I don't have any red around me. I need my red flag. That would work. We haven't done our red flags in a while. We've had a lot of cases with some red flags in them. I forgot I got those flags for that occasion. Let me see if I can. Let me grab them really quick. I had these like. So we have the red flags. We haven't used those in a while. I had a cord down there. And then we had I got the orange flags for when, people were convicted of crimes and then they were sent off to prison. But we haven't used them in a while. We need to use these. They're fun. I have like 12 of them too. So we have like a ton. I should send them to everybody. Send everybody a flag. Thanks, Aries. They're up 10 now. That's good because I think that they're playing a pretty decent team tonight too. That was what Vincent was saying. Oh, Notre Dame. Yep. Beat those Notre Dame frauds. That's so funny. So welcome on in, everybody. Hopefully you guys are having a great weekend. Hopefully the weather's good where you are. Is it okay where you are, Aries? I know you guys are getting a hit over there. Here in Ohio, it's been great, I guess you could say. It's not California anymore, but it's Ohio. We have noticed that there was like nobody out today when we were out shopping and stuff. We don't know if it's because we're used to like being in California with the traffic and the people and standing in line for hours for something simple. Today was really nice. So welcome in, everybody. And hopefully you guys got back into the chat. I was trying to go up for a little bit, go up in the chat for a minute to see where everyone was. So welcome on in. If you guys don't mind just taking a second to hit the like, it does help the channel and it will get the video out to more people. So when I was getting ready for tonight's live, I was just going to read over some documents and just, chit chat it up because we haven't done an Idaho live since the 9th of September. It's been a while. But when I had left for vacation, I had set up those pre-recorded podcasts for you guys. Well, the podcast that you guys listened to whenever I was gone, it has another episode. So I was like, well, that's perfect. Because we just got finished watching the second one or the third. I think it was like the third or the fourth one in the series. So we'll watch that one tonight as well. It'll be fun. It'll be a good night. There are a lot of new documents that came out. I was skimming through them. A lot of the new documents are, will you redact this or will you, seal this, things of that nature. A lot of them are, asking for like if cameras can be in the courtroom. They're asking as in like the court, like Court TV, News Nation, all the bigger news channels are, sending in that they're reading, the criminal rule. I think it's like 45 of the courtroom conduct. So that way, when they get in there and they're bringing their cameras in, they know not to be featuring their cameras over to Bryan Kohberger because he doesn't like that. He don't like that. Hey, Fred. Low 80s. Oh, wow. Hey, Cat's Life. Hey, Andy. Hey, welcome in. Hey, Deb. I'm going to go back in the chat a little bit. Hey, Tori. Catherine. I seen you guys. Hey, Boone. I see everybody too. Hey, Ivy. Hopefully you're feeling great. Feeling great. Looking great. So I'll go ahead and pull up the cases here. Before I do that, I will drop in the chat if anyone wants to become a member of our channel. We'd love to have you. And I will get these. Actually, I'm going to put the judicial branch in there. So if you guys are ever looking for any of the documents that like I put out or any other creator puts out, you can always go to the idaho.gov judicial branch and it'll give you all of the documents. I'm going to put it in the chat for you guys in case you guys ever want to see them because they're all there. And that's perfect. It's perfect. So let's get these up here. I think this is it, maybe. Yep, it is. Okay. So I try to color coordinate them for you guys. If it's in yellow, it's going to be the court filed it. The court files all of these, but if it's the pink, it's going to be filed by like the state. And then if it's blue, it's the defense. So I just think like boy for blue, pink, mostly girls, yellow, court. That way, if you ever come in on a live and you don't know where we're at in the documents, you'll know. So this one is just for an order for closed hearing on defendant's motion to dismiss indictment. And this one came out on the 19th. And we'll just kind of go through these kind of quickly because, there's not like a whole lot to them, but there's a lot of stuff that's been coming out. Also, I don't know, I don't know if you guys got to see the 48 hours episode. I'm debating on whether to put it out as a pre-recorded because we did it before. We did 48 hours. I think we did it live, but I've heard of other people getting in trouble for streaming 48 hours, but we've done it on my channel and I never got in trouble for it. So I don't know. I'm debating. I listened to it on the plane ride on the way home. So we will discuss it though tonight after we watch the podcast. We'll discuss all that because I want to talk to you guys about everything that has come out. So yeah, this is just saying that the order, this is an order for the court, and it says the court having before it stipulated motion for closed hearing on defendant's motion to dismiss indictment and good cause appearing. Now, therefore, it is hereby ordered that the hearing on the defendant's motion to dismiss indictment on grounds of biased grand jury and admissible evidence, lack of sufficient evidence, and prosecutorial misconduct and withholding exculpatory evidence shall be a closed hearing, which, I mean, hello. Yeah. They're going to be talking about grand jury, the grand jury in there. I would hope that they wouldn't be putting the grand jury's business all out there, with the cameras. So yeah, these are, so far so good. We're getting through them. Read the first one to you guys and I'm like, look at us go. We've been reading the documents for Delphi over on this channel. So if you guys are into that case, make sure you are subscribed and everything because that's a long document. Let me tell you. This one here came out it was stamped on this 14th, but it was after the 14th because I have these in order. So I don't know why it's doing that. But this one is State of Idaho and it's just one from the courts. So pursuant to Idaho Rule of Evidence 201, the state requests that the court take judicial notice of the transcripts, exhibits, and jury instructions from the grand jury proceedings in the case number, and it's redacted. When a party requests judicial notice of records, exhibits, or transcripts from the court file in the same or a separate case, the party must identify the specific items for the judicial notice is requested or offer to the court and serve on all parties copies of those items. The court must take judicial notice if a party requests it and the court is supplied with the necessary information. And that's all redacted. So the state identifies the following specific items for which judicial notice is requested. So they want 3 of the jury transcripts for the days 1, day 2, and day 3. And let me know in the comments if you guys know this. I don't know because I don't know this. How long are grand juries normally held? Because 3 days to me doesn't seem like a very long time. I mean, I don't, but you're not putting a whole case in front of them, but you're going to put whatever's in the probable cause and everything. So, and that was an 18-page probable cause, 19-page, 18-page. So, I don't know. Who posted the one corner clip pic? You know what? I don't know who leaked that picture. That's a good question, but it's out there. And then now we know it was Jack in the photo. And me the whole time I was like, that don't look like him. I didn't see that looking like him to me. And it was him. Kaylee's parents came out and said that it was. And I think it was I can't remember what interview. I think it was one of the bigger ones though, like 2020 Dateline, 48 Hours, one of the first ones that they did. And then they want the electric juror questionnaires provided to the presiding judge and the state prior to the grand jury proceedings. The exhibits admitted to the grand jury proceedings in case number as described in the court minutes included as as attached A. The jury instructions used in the grand jury proceedings and included as attachment B. Each of these items have been provided to both the state and the defense, and the court has access to these items in the clerk's office. The court needs these items to properly evaluate defendant's second motion to dismiss the indictment that resulted from the grand jury proceedings and the state's objection, which has been filed contemporaneously with this request because defendant has alleged the state improperly presented hearsay evidence. I wonder what that hearsay was. Like, I don't know. The indictment will be sustained if, after excluding the inadmissible evidence, there remains sufficient admissible evidence to indict and committed prosecutorial misconduct. The court must examine the totality of the circumstances to determine whether indictment should be dismissed. Now, do you guys think they will dismiss the indictment also? Hey, Amanda. Harry said, I'm not in law. Yeah, me too. I'm like, me either. I do know a lot of lawyers, though. I don't know why I call them. I should call someone. Hey, Kyle. Yankee Kyle. I should be like, yes, Phantom Growler. Everyone but me. I'm so mad. Everyone's a crime con. I actually was like, everyone kept saying that today to the point where I'm going next year. Vincent was like, we're going to go to crime con. We're going. You're going. You'll be there. I'm like, because I could have met Nancy, y'all. Ickamel met Nancy. Now you got me all on that. I love her. She's back there, I was gonna bring my cardboard cutout with me. Yeah, it'll be entertaining. So wait for that in 1 year from now. I'll be there. Hey, Kaylee. So do you think that they'll end up dismissing the grand jury indictment, or do you think that the judge is going to throw it out? I think the judge is probably he's not going to dismiss it. I don't think. If they do dismiss the indictment, they're just going to come back and re-indict. Really? Oh, Kaylee, you live so close. Oh, thanks, Yankee Kyle. They are. Let's all go. Yeah, we need to get like a big tour bus. That's what we need. We need like a couple of them. Like one of those, like the real like nice ones that just go like around the, they go like around like the nice towns and stuff, and they show you like nice homes. Not like the real tinsy ones, but we'll get like a nice tour bus. So where we can all fit on it. Bucket list, yes. No, I was like, we're going next year because I'm missing out. But I know I'll end up like screaming Nancy. I'll probably end up getting arrested because I'll probably scare her. No, I'm just kidding. I went with my big cardboard cutout. That would be entertaining. That'd be entertainment, right? Hey, be happy. Welcome in. A big red bus. Yeah, we'll be pulling in like that. That's what I'm saying. Be pulling in a big red bus. Be like, what's up? Maybe we'll have the roof off actually, because that would be kind of cool. Because it's in like, what is it, Miami, Orlando or something? It's in Florida. Oh, so do they move it each year, Alicia? I didn't know. Nashville. I've never been to Nashville. Get my cowgirl boots ready. Vincent, get my boots ready. That'd be funny. That'd be fun. I think it'd be fun to go. So, because we usually do like the California trip, and I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Go from California to like Florida or wherever it is. And, and he was like, we'll just go California sooner. Maybe. I was like, okay, so maybe we'll go there sooner. We'll get there a little sooner this year. Oh, thanks, Yankee Kyle. I appreciate you always keep sharing my stuff. That's so nice. I love that. That's like the best thing to do too. That's like such a helpful thing. It really is. So this one is going to be for the defense, and it's just the motion to file reply to state's objection to defendant's second motion to dismiss indictment under seal. And that's exactly what it says in the sentence. I don't know how they make the titles exactly how long the actual piece of paper is, the motion is. So these are going to be quick. Those ones are. The next one is, let me read this. No. Nope, I didn't. It is the stipulated motion to vacate and reset defendant's motion. Let me make it bigger for us here. And it says, now comes Bryan C. Kohberger by and through his attorney, Ann C. Taylor, public defender, and with no objection from the Latah County Prosecutor's Office, and hereby request the court for an order vacating the defendant's motion hearings set for September 22nd at 10:30 a.m. and 1 p.m. and resetting the defendant's motion for October 26th, 2023, pursuant to below schedule. Thank you, Bill, coming in hot with the gifted memberships. Thank you so much. It's so good to see ya with your rainbow arm. It's so good to see you, Bill. So the court date that was going to be for September, 22nd? What is today? You all know I don't even know what day it is. For Friday. I'll get back to the days. I'll get back. I just got back from vacation. It's hard to remember what day it is now. Or the date anyway. So this is for they want to reset it, and it says for motion to dismiss indictment on grounds of biased grand jury, inadmissible evidence, lack of sufficient evidence, and prosecutorial misconduct in withholding exculpatory evidence at 9:30 a.m. That's a mouthful, and will be a closed hearing. And then, of course, we all knew that would probably be a closed hearing. But motion to dismiss indictment on grounds of error in grand jury instructions or an alternative remand for preliminary hearing at 1, that will be open. I'm surprised that will actually even be open. I really am. I thought the second one was open, but yeah, I'm actually very surprised. Because they're like talking about grand jury and stuff, I just would think that they would close it, but I'm glad that it's going to be open. Look at that, all that green. Hey, G. I love that name. That is so G. I love it. It's simple. I can go at G. I can do that. Some people have the longest names. Like, look at Ivy up here with the longest name on the internet. I got to put it up there now. I feel like mine's like that. Like when you do the at, and I'm like, I try to type it out in the chat. It's hard sometimes when they're long. I love that G. I love it. Very simple. Very, very awesome. I love that. To the point. So like I said, a lot of these were just, like seals. So this one is order to file reply to state's objection to defendant's second motion to dismiss indictment under seal. So they're going to file that under seal. And this just came out on the 20th. So this came out on Wednesday. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see these on a different channel or not, because these ones just came out. The other ones they came out on the 19th, 14th and the 19th, I believe. And then this is the last one that I'll show you guys. I'm only going to torture you for a little bit. The documents. And this is order vacating and resetting the defendant's motion. And it's just, it says the court having before it the stipulated motion to vacate and reset defendant's motion and good cause appearing now, therefore, it is hereby ordered that defendant's motion hearings currently set for September 22nd at 10:30 and 1 shall be vacated. And they are going to, it's further ordered that the defendant's motion to dismiss indictment on grounds of biased grand jury and inadmissible evidence, lack of sufficient evidence, and prosecutorial misconduct in withholding exculpatory evidence shall be reset for October 26th. So, when was he? October 2nd. I couldn't remember. So October 2nd, he was supposed to go to trial, and now he's not even, he's still going for this, just think about that. October 26th. This may be going on for a while. Get comfortable. Get in your comfy chair. It is further ordered that defendant's motion to dismiss indictment on grounds of error in grand jury instructions or an alternative remand for preliminary hearing shall be reset for October 26th at 1 p.m. and shall be open to the public. I wish I lived a little closer to Idaho, just a little closer. Hey, Steve. It is, Kaylee. It feels like it's going to be forever. Like it really feels like it. Sometimes it does. But I think at the same time, at least the ball is rolling, I guess. But this is, wish it was just like going a little faster. They're going to end up they're going to give the defense a lot of time just right now. I feel like because if the prosecution, I don't know if they do, but if they don't have all their evidence back yet, and I think they probably do at this point, I would think they would at this point, then they can't ever think, the defense would be ready because they have to have all the discovery in order to put on a good defense, the best defense that they can give Bryan Kohberger. If the government shuts down, I don't know, Tom. I guess I'll be the judge. Grand jury, 3 to 7 days. Thank you, Alicia. I was looking that up earlier and I couldn't really find anything. And then I like my ADD got in the way and I think I did something. I don't know. Something shiny got my attention. So thank you. That's a Thursday? Okay. Thank you. Yes, very much so. I wonder what the bios grand jury is. I want to know what it all is. I just want to know it all. So what we'll do is we'll play the podcast first, and then we'll go over like the newer updates, like the ones that were, that came out with like the 48 hours episode. And then I don't know if you guys saw it, but Brian Enton got, the scoop on how Bryan Kohberger is living behind bars. And I guess it's not as like great as we all thought. I don't think it was great to begin with, but Banfield played it on her show and she was kind of, I don't know, smiling about it a little bit. But I always picture Kohberger like just chilling in his jail cell, like on the floor, like literally with all these papers in front of them, like just marking them, you know what I mean? Like evidence, marking them. But I guess he has like an old computer that they all get to use. They all get to use the same computer. And it's like a really old one. It doesn't even have internet access. And it's just to read the court documents. And I'm like, really? So he has like a thumb drive or something they give him. And then he takes it over and he puts it in the computer. And that's how he looks at the documents. And then he goes back to his cell. And I'm like, oh, I would want the internet printed out if I was him. Look, he made it. Thanks, Bill. It would be the federal government shutting down. Local governments like Idaho will be open. Oh, well, shoot. I would still be the judge, jury, and all of it. Let me find the podcast. I have it over on this side. Okay. So I want to make sure I'm playing the correct episode. Make sure I don't do that again. Earlier today, I like to listen to them before, we listen to them together. And I was listening to the one from last time. And I was like 20 minutes in before I realized. I was like, what? So on our last live, let me get back to our last live or our last video. Sorry. If you watched our like pre-recorded videos that we did last week, I did like a whole week's worth of them for you, but you don't necessarily have to watch the other podcast to be caught up to watch this one because we kind of all know the storyline, but this just goes into details about, different things in the storyline. Now tonight, they're going to talk about the DNA evidence and the collection and they go into detail about how it's touch DNA and it's put there by physical touch. It's a really good episode. So the last one that we watched was episode 4, and that was on the 15th of September because that was a pre-recorded one. And then now this will be the new one. So since this is a podcast, not a video, I'm just going to put some pictures in front of it that I have of, the Idaho 4, of Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee. And then I'll probably just add some pictures of like Kohberger and stuff up. That way you guys aren't just looking at a weird screen. So you guys will, be looking at a picture instead. And thank you again thank you, Be Happy, for gifting some memberships. And thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Be Happy. That's so nice. Bring them on in. Bring them in. That's so nice. That's so nice. Thank you so much. Thanks. And thanks again, Bill. Haven't seen you in a while. It's so nice to see you. So good to see you. Okay, let's get this podcast on. So this one's going to be let me make sure I'm doing the right one again. Yeah. Okay. So the last one we listened to, like I said, was Cracks in the Narrative. And then this one's going to be The Hunt. Let me share this with you. And then I will play this. And then, like I said, I'll put up a picture or something. So it's not just this picture. I'm also going to fast forward through the commercials. I think there's a couple in the beginning, but I think there's just a couple in the beginning and that's it. And if you guys don't mind just hitting the like button, I'll try not to pause it too much for you guys and I appreciate it. And I'll be in the chat with you guys hanging out.
Getting ready.
Deli Mix. Just one bite in after a long day of 6.
extremely
into who killed 4 University of Idaho.
The Moscow police
23 Ionic 5. Okay, Hyundai.
social media content, pictures,
Quantities at select dealers in select states
I'll
only.
leave it here.
Contact your Hyundai dealer for availability details.
The Moscow Police Department put out a renewed call for social media content, pictures, and videos from the community.
Investigators are still asking anyone
Thank you
with any
so much,
information
Mary
to contact
Beth.
the
That's so
Moscow
nice.
tip
Thank
line.
you.
The investigation into who killed 4 University of Idaho students has now received 10,000 tips.
This is The Idaho Massacre, a production of KT Studios and iHeartRadio. Episode 6, The Hunt. I'm Courtney Armstrong, a television producer at KT Studios with Stephanie Lydecker, Jeff Shane, and Connor Powell. Weeks after 4 University of Idaho students were murdered in their off-campus home, investigators are on a relentless search for the killer. As the tips rolled in, multiple law enforcement agencies, including the Idaho State Police and the FBI, were working with the Moscow PD to crack the case. They were methodically zeroing in on their main suspect, following the evidence from the mysterious White Elantra to the DNA left at the scene. While observing Bryan Kohberger at his family's home in Pennsylvania, the 28-year-old was seen wearing rubber latex gloves in public and putting trash in neighbors' garbage cans. Kohberger's family also noticed this bizarre behavior. According to reports, one of his own sisters began to wonder if her brother could have been involved in the murders, at one point even saying loudly that her brother lived near the victims and drove a white Hyundai Elantra. While some in the Kohberger family may have had their suspicions about him, unbeknownst to them, their own family's genetic DNA would be key to linking Bryan Kohberger to the murders.
Big crack in this case came from DNA, specifically genetic genealogy.
Didn't mean to interrupt this so soon, but could you imagine his father, what his father thinks? I didn't even really think about that until I heard this today. Like, you know, his father's DNA is what got him kind of clipped there for a minute. Like, I mean, that's how they kind of like linked it to Bryan Kohberger. I don't know. I would just feel some type of way if I was a parent, I feel like. Not to say that he should, but I'm just wondering how you guys would feel.
Within days of the gruesome murders, police suspected the white Hyundai Elantra seen repeatedly driving near the King Road crime site was connected to the murders. Investigators immediately began compiling a list of white Elantras registered in the region. Investigators first sought cell records. They then, most likely, looked for every person who pinged the Moscow Tower and owned a white Elantra. But the search of the long list of white Elantras didn't turn up anything conclusive for weeks. Here's Jeff and Stephanie.
As November was coming to a close, the Moscow police assured the public that there was no threat to the community and that they were in fact making progress.
And at this point, cops were really combing through thousands of tips and pieces of information, most of which, frankly, led nowhere.
Can you imagine the pressure? Not only are they concerned about the safety of this college town, but they have the whole world watching them.
I remember this time. The public really wanted information, and every day that went by without an arrest, people were getting angrier and angrier.
Yeah, it's a really unfair expectation, but at this point, there really was no credible suspect or murder weapon.
And then by early December, investigators had combed through the victims' classmates, their friends, as well as any perhaps registered sex offenders in the area, stalkers, any individuals known for violently harassing people. They even looked into a local white supremacist. But again, sadly, it all led to nothing.
The white Elantra was truly the best lead, but it's an incredibly common car. In 2021, Hyundai sold over 124,000 Elantras. In fact, the number of Elantras sold last year compared to the year before increased 47%. So it's basically like finding a needle in a haystack.
For weeks, Bryan Kohberger was simply a name on an ever-growing list, one of the many white Elantra owners. And then he was the lone suspect and under arrest.
Suspect Bryan Kohberger is behind bars after investigators linked his DNA at the crime scene to the DNA taken from the trash at his parents' home.
The official public story laid out in the probable cause affidavit is that investigators positively identified Kohberger by matching DNA evidence from the knife sheath to Kohberger's father's DNA. But investigators in the Idaho police lab didn't have a positive DNA match for the 28-year-old criminology student until at least December 27th, when a surveillance crew pulled his father's DNA from the trash. So how did investigators know, and with such confidence, to start surveillance on Kohberger long before the conclusive DNA match?
Investigative genetic genealogy was used to point them in his direction.
The path to positively identifying the Washington State University PhD student employed a new, and at the same time one of the most controversial, modern crime-solving techniques. It's a DNA method that is only reluctantly talked about by law enforcement. Before we can explain what genetic genealogy is and why it's so rare and controversial, we need to explain how DNA material is normally collected and used in a criminal investigation.
So DNA is what makes us what we are. And every single cell of our body, with a few exceptions, has the same DNA. I like to describe it as an enormous encyclopedia.
That's Daniel Padini, the head of the Forensic Sciences Department at George Washington University, speaking with Jeff.
And every cell of our body kind of harvests or looks at the parts of that encyclopedia that it needs to become what it needs to develop in. So the liver cell will look at the encyclopedia chapter on how to become a liver cell. The retina cell will do the same, but it's going to be a different chapter. But the entire encyclopedia is present in every single cell. So we can look at parts of this encyclopedia that are different among individuals. And we can generate a DNA profile that has a very, very low frequency in the population, to the point that we can essentially identify a single individual.
How has that now kind of changed the way investigators work on criminal cases?
Yeah, it really has dramatically changed the forensic investigations in terms of being able to identify an individual that was at the crime scene. If biological evidence is recovered at a crime scene, a DNA profile can be generated and then compared either to a database. Everybody's heard about the CODIS, Combined DNA Index System, which is a repository of DNA profiles from convicted offenders, or directly to the DNA of a suspect in order to identify the person that left their DNA at the crime scene.
And as we know, there was touch DNA found on it. Can you explain to us what touch DNA is?
Touch DNA is a very general term that refers to the DNA that is deposited on a surface through touching it. There's a lot of different types of cells that can be deposited when touching a surface. For example, if I scratch my nose or I cough in my hand, there may be some cells that come from the mucus or from saliva. There's also epithelial cells from my skin that I'm going to deposit. And also, there's a lot of cell-free DNA that is secreted in sweat. So there's a bunch of different types of sources of DNA that we deposit. So exactly what touch DNA is, we don't know, but it's a combination of all of those. And so you can't really see it with the naked eye. So you have to trust or you have to make some assumptions. And generally, you're going to try and collect that from surfaces that have been touched.
Is it how we see in the movies where they like dust it and there's like a perfect thumbprint on the ground or wherever?
No, it's not quite like that. Sometimes if there's a blood stain or a semen stain or a saliva stain, then yes, it's pretty simple. You swab that area, you transfer the biological stain onto a swab, and then you extract the DNA directly from the swab. At times, though, you're not able to see the DNA. You can assume that there is DNA in that area, and so you swab that surface. In the case that we're talking about, they found this knife sheath, and they swabbed the area, at least that's my understanding, they swabbed the area around the button, and they extracted the DNA from that. But you don't necessarily see it, and you don't know it's there until you've completed the extraction process, and you went through a second process that's called DNA quantification. The DNA quantification process allows us to determine how much DNA there is, and also the quality of that DNA in terms of it being degraded or potentially inhibited.
So if you're an investigator, you just kind of try to get DNA off of anything without you're kind of blindly doing it. You're thinking, okay, there could be DNA here, could be DNA here. And then it's not till you test it that you actually are aware of if there is DNA, and then you have to figure out how much DNA.
Obviously, you can't swab an entire apartment. That's just not practical. And the DNA extraction process and analysis is expensive, and it takes time. So you need to be frugal and to keep in mind the resources that are available. So you tend to do an evaluation of the crime scene, and based on the scenario, identify pieces of evidence that have the greatest chance of providing useful information for the case.
Here again, Stephanie and Jeff.
Since its creation in 1987, DNA testing has proven to be an incredible useful tool in identifying criminals. It completely changed the criminal justice system.
How it applies to this case is really fascinating. We know that investigators pulled a single source male touch DNA off the button of the knife sheath that was left at the murder scene. Touch DNA is DNA transferred from a person to an object via contact with the object itself. It's called touch DNA because it only requires very small samples. For example, from the skin cell left on something after it's been touched or casually handled, or from footprints. So cops have this piece of touch DNA, and they tried to link that to criminals already in the system. Because as you may or may not know, when someone is arrested, they have to give a fingerprint, which then gets put into law enforcement's database system. So let's say whoever did commit this massacre also had robbed a bank years ago, cops would get a match and have all the suspects' information.
But that didn't happen here, because by all accounts, Bryan did not have any kind of a criminal record. Maybe he was busted for tailgating or something, but that was the extent of it.
I would think that since he had wanted to work in law enforcement and applied for that internship, that he might have had to give his fingerprint at some point.
But there was no match in the system of DNA at the crime scene, so unfortunately, this was just a dead end.
Let's stop here for a break. We'll be back in a moment.
We're back with another week of football, and DraftKings Sportsbook is keeping us in on the NFL action with great offers every single 200 instant
from everywhere, all taste, easy but
meal preferences include meal plans to choose. .com/60massacre and code 60massacre to get 60% off plus free shipping. Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well. With pressure mounting and leads coming up empty, investigators turn to genetic genealogy as an alternative way of identifying DNA on the knife sheath. Here's forensic expert Joseph Scott Morgan.
The cool thing about genetic genealogy, and it's almost as if you've got people that have discovered this thing just in the last few years, where it's this fascinating methodology of tracking down things or putting an identity to things or people more specifically that otherwise have remained kind of cloaked in secrecy for many, many years.
How would you say it differs or doesn't differ from regular DNA testing?
When it comes to testing for any kind of biological element as it's tied back to DNA, the feds maintain a database that is actually referred to It's the FBI's database. It's actually referred to as CODIS, which is Combined DNA Index System. And people hear this term thrown around quite a bit. And I'm sure that folks have heard about, where you have sex offenders where they are mandated by court to give up a sample. And once that sample is rendered unto the courts and unto the system, it's banked at that point in time. So those are known offenders, all right? On the other side of the house, you have what's referred to as a forensic database. Those are these horrible crimes, just like the Golden State Killer, that have gone undetected for many years. Those are forensic cases where you have a sample, which is essentially the DNA code that's built into all of us, but yet you don't have an identity that goes specifically to that person. And so those are the unknowns. And when you're looking at serialized crimes, for instance, if you can get a DNA sample from multiple cases and it kind of funnel it back into the system, what they're looking for in the forensic side of the house is to see if you get multiple hits from a single individual. And that gives you an idea of that you have a serial perpetrator, for instance, on your hands. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to genetic genealogy, this throws kind of a wrinkle into everything, because for years and years, it's been all about unknown assailants. When you have an event where you have DNA deposition at a scene, let's say, for instance, from any kind of body fluid, blood, semen, whatever the case, saliva at the scene, or maybe even partial DNA that we get from touch DNA. If you can capture that bit of biological sample, you can kind of kick it into the next level with genetic genealogy, because there's this massive database that exists out there of people that are seeking their ancestors, or perhaps people that are looking to find out their parentage, people that have been put up for adoption. Who are they related to? And so many government agencies look at this as this kind of broad ranging spectrum that they can dig into and utilize that to kind of connect the dots, if you would, as to who an unknown perpetrator might be. And here's the thing. Many of these cases are solved by identifying cousins, of all things. And we all have cousins. Many of us are related to one another and we have no idea. And so you look for this connectivity, and then you kind of begin to narrow this down with genetic genealogy.
Despite having their own in-state forensic laboratory, the Idaho State Police contacted a private third-party company to conduct the genealogy testing. Othram is a Texas-based company that specializes in forensic genetic genealogy and has helped resolve unsolved murders and identify unknown victims. With the help of the FBI, the firm was able to create a more extensive DNA profile of the suspected killer, and then it was uploaded to commercial genetic testing databases. Jeff and Stephanie.
We don't know where the data profile was uploaded. Most likely, though, it was GEDmatch or Family Tree DNA, which are both familial DNA testing services. On these sites, you can find out what your heritage is, or if you have any long-lost cousins across the world. They are also both commercial websites that allow law enforcement searches. They differ from 23andMe or Ancestry DNA, which do not allow investigators to search the records.
That does make perfect sense from a consumer standpoint. I mean, look, if you go to a website like 23andMe or Ancestry DNA, you may not want your personal data getting out to law enforcement, or personal data regarding anybody in your family. I would imagine that these companies are frankly afraid that law enforcement has access to everyone's DNA, and then people won't upload their info, thus hurting their ultimate bottom line. Privacy is a pretty major concern for this industry.
Here again, Jeff speaking with forensic expert Joseph Scott Morgan.
And would you say that's why it's controversial? Because every Tom, Dick, and Harry can kind of help the police catch their cousin in a crime?
Most people in the population that are submitting their DNA, they don't have a point of reference for what their constitutional standing is as it applies to privacy and these sorts of things. And, I think that for many folks, when they render this DNA sample, and it's generally a cheek swab or a cheek scraping, where you go in, you take the sample, you submit it to one of these companies, and they begin to run your profile. You don't have this expectation that this is going to be used to solve a crime. Now, many people might not have a problem with that, but others do. They're not entering into this agreement with a company so that they're going to be crime solvers. They want to determine the mystery that surrounds their heritage and to try to determine who they came from. The Supreme Court has ruled in the past that you do not have like a baked in expectation of privacy if you freely surrender something. Okay. Particularly in this case, we're talking about genetic material. So they've held that there is no expectation of privacy for a third party. And so you've got these two that go back and forth. What it comes down to, I think probably for many of these companies, people famously like Ancestry.com, we've got 23andMe that have been out there for a while. They have vigorously stated that they are not working with any government agency, and they're not going to surrender anything unless they're being presented with a subpoena, that they are in fact being compelled to offer up these profiles that they have. And so that in and of itself is kind of striking when it comes to the utility of forensic genealogy.
And is that why you think to use it or to talk about it when they do use it?
I think to a great degree, police are reticent to reveal their sources when it comes to, and you generally don't find out, the veil is not lifted, if you will, from their source, how they went about accomplishing these tasks. There are companies out there that do in fact aid in the facilitation of this. Ortham comes to mind in particular. They've been around for a few years now, and they've certainly made a name for themselves and are highly regarded from a scientific perspective and the methodologies that they employ, and they've had great success. The average person on the street, they're asked this question: how much do you value your privacy? If the whole thing turns upon your DNA, are you willing to surrender that bit of privacy that you have in order to solve a crime that might facilitate someone being taken off the street and that sort of thing? And it's not necessarily a very simple answer. It can be very, very complicated.
This case, I think, is different because we hear about it so much for cold cases, but this is an active investigation where genetic genealogy came into play. So obviously, like question 4, it's normally in cold cases, this is a little bit of an outlier.
Yeah, because this is in fact not a cold case. On the very first day that this happened, you could hear the whisperings already. I'd say probably within the first 12 hours of me being on the air and covering the case. From a forensic standpoint, I had questions being thrown at me repeatedly about DNA and DNA linkage to a potential perpetrator. How is it possible that a subject could go into an environment which we can, I think, pretty safely state is just a bloodbath and not leave some essence of themselves behind? And you have the genetic connection at the scene in that home where this massacre took place. And then apparently you have genetic connectivity at Kohberger's family's house. So now you're looking at two things that are kind of coalescing here. They're coming together, and you begin to create this picture. It's a damning bit of evidence, I think. Now, the courts, the attorneys will get together and they'll begin to question things like sourcing and procedurally, how was this done? How was the assessment done? How can this actually be validated? How do we know the sample may or may not have been contaminated because it is so very fragile? Those questions will come up, but the fact is you have this arguably astronomical numerical mountain that the defense is going to have to climb in this case. And I don't necessarily think that the DNA data that they gathered there in Pennsylvania and the DNA that we know about, at least thus far, from what was collected at this quadruple homicide is the end of the DNA. There very well might be more. We just don't know what it is at this point in time.
What's your opinion as an expert? Do you think genetic genealogy should be used for arrests or narrowing down suspect lists?
I think that there is utility for it, certainly. I don't know that I have encountered a case where it was turned around this quickly, because look, it seems as though we've been covering Idaho forever and ever. this point, but we haven't. It's really been a very short period of time, and this profile was turned out very quickly. So there is obviously provable utility relative to the tool. I think that it can potentially be a very slippery slope from a privacy standpoint. There are so many cases out there that are cold, and you would want nothing more than to have answers to these things that have kind of lingered in our mind and actually have become part and parcel of our history. And certainly in the true crime community, can you even imagine if they were able to, say, for instance, come up with a bit of unidentified DNA from, say, the Black Dahlia case or from Jack the Ripper, and they were able to construct some kind of DNA profile based upon that? I think a lot of us would really like to know who those individuals might be that committed these crimes. However, we have to keep in the forefront of our mind what our expectations are as American citizens. Do we have a right to privacy? And this is not just maybe our records or our papers that you're talking about government authorities having access to. We're talking about our base genetic code.
Do you think it's the future? Like, is there any way to stop, to, kind of put this back in the box? Or is it like now police have this in their tool belt, they're going to use it?
No, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. We're beyond that now. We've crossed the Rubicon. It will be used and continue to be used. I just hope that the people that wield the tool have the best interest of the citizenry at large, because no one in our population is guilty until they are in fact proven guilty. A quadruple homicide in a college town is stuff that just doesn't happen every day. And it's one of these moments in time that it has created extraordinary circumstances. And to my way of thinking, the investigative authorities that are involved in this case went to extraordinary measures in order to facilitate the solving of this case, or at least to give them an indication as to who may have had a hand in this. And that's why they went to these great lengths using genetic genealogy.
Let's stop here for another break.
Okay, here's a question. Are you the one who orders the food at work? If so, then you know the make it easy.
Which recently went public.
Territory. But with NFL Sunday,
Just had the DNA.
no refunds. Subscription auto renews.
Once FBI investigators and Othram genealogists had the DNA, they began to look for full or partial matches to the suspected Idaho killer's DNA. The first results were distant relatives. Slowly, they created a massive family tree that utilized the genetic information of the Kohberger's immediate family, cousins, and all of their distant relatives. That tree would have provided a short list of potential suspects within the Kohberger family tree. Again, Stephanie and Jeff.
The most famous successful case of genetic genealogy mapping is the Golden State Killer. In the 1970s and 80s, he terrorized California, murdering at least 13 people. Likely, he killed and raped many more. But even with DNA evidence, years went by with no solid leads, and the cases went cold. Why? Because the killer wasn't in any criminal database. But in 2018, investigators had an idea. They used public DNA information to see if they could locate and identify family members of the Golden State Killer using genetic genealogy mapping. After painstakingly mapping out the killer's genetic links, police were able to identify Joseph James D'Angelo, a retired police officer living outside Sacramento, California.
To me, it's super interesting that he, just like Kohberger aspired to be, was also in law enforcement.
I agree. So anyways, this technique is now being used to solve hundreds of cold cases.
I'll say this, though, it really does require a shift in the process and the procedures that are currently in place to catching a bad guy, because labs really aren't set up to do this type of genetic genealogy mapping. They also don't regularly employ genealogists who map family trees.
But all that might change because of the success of the Idaho investigation.
On the morning of December 19th, investigators positively identified their lone suspect. By mapping the genetic similarities of the killer's relatives, police were able to confirm through DNA genetic genealogy mapping that 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was the likely killer.
Can you imagine that day for the hardworking investigators on this case?
Yeah, Kohberger was already one of their suspects. His name had been forwarded to investigators. He drove a white Hyundai Elantra. He lived near the victims, had exhibited odd behavior, and his cell phone had pinged in the area of the crime. He checked every box.
And yet, without a murder weapon or some kind of DNA evidence, police still don't really have any real case against him. While it might seem like a lot in hindsight, at the time, it was all really circumstantial. To make an arrest, cops really needed something more.
And it's not really clear if Kohberger was quote unquote the suspect before the genealogy info came back, or if his name was just on a long list of persons of interest.
With Kohberger now identified as the prime suspect, investigators worked to strengthen their case against him, applying for a search warrant of Kohberger's phone activity in the time period around the murders. On the morning of the killings, the results showed Kohberger's phone pinging a tower near his home before moving south at a rapid speed and then disconnecting from the cellular phone system. Here's reporter Chris Spargo.
So at 2:42 in the morning, Bryan Kohberger's cell phone is recorded as sort of being on the network in Pullman, Washington, where his dormitory is on Washington State University campus. Then a few minutes later, it goes off the network and is disconnected. From that point on, there's just accounts of people seeing his White Hyundai Elantra. So his White Hyundai Elantra is seen leaving Pullman shortly after that. And then around 3:30, it's seen in Moscow. Now, the direct route from Pullman to Moscow is about 15 minutes tops, and this is late at night, so there's not going to be any traffic. So it's assumed he took some sort of way that would have gone around that sort of main road.
During the exact moments of the murders, Kohberger's cell phone was offline and wouldn't return until 4:48 a.m., at least 20 minutes after investigators say the murders took place. When Kohberger's phone does reconnect, it pings off several towers south of Moscow and maps an odd early morning travel pattern for the next 45 minutes. The data shows Kohberger driving on back roads and taking an off-the-beaten-track route to his home in Pullman, Washington.
It's a difficult alibi for him because he has to explain that phone call pinging off the tower in the middle of nowhere at 4:45 a.m. on the night of the murders.
Police also obtained cell phone data that showed that Kohberger's phone was in the area of the house on King Road at least a dozen times in the weeks before the attack. By December 23rd, police were closing in on Kohberger, but investigators still need a direct genetic comparison between Kohberger and the DNA on the knife sheath before making an arrest. 4 days later, Pennsylvania State Police are tasked with watching Bryan Kohberger pull trash from his parents' home. On December 28th, DNA results show that the male DNA pulled from the trash can was a 99.9998% likely to be the biological father of the DNA pulled from the knife sheath left on Madison Mogen's bed. This parental link was the last piece of evidence needed for an arrest warrant. Kohberger was arrested shortly after. When Bryan Kohberger was arrested in the early hours of December 30th, his family didn't know the role their own DNA played in his capture. But they did release a statement expressing sympathy for the 4 Idaho families who lost their precious children. Kohberger's family also said they had fully cooperated with law enforcement agencies in an attempt to seek the truth. They also asked for privacy as the case moved forward through the legal process. Later, they found out their own family's DNA led investigators to Bryan Kohberger. Stephanie and Jeff.
DNA has become increasingly important for successful prosecutions thanks to something called the CSI effect, which shows like CSI, Cold Case, Without a Trace, Criminal Minds, and basically every other CBS series. Everyone thinks they're a criminal expert. So a large portion of jurors expect that the prosecutors will present some type of scientific data as part of their case.
Which in some cases is a very fair assessment. And look, things like eyewitnesses and motives are still very important. But without any kind of scientific DNA or firearm ballistics or fingerprints, it's really hard to get a conviction.
The CSI effect is fascinating as it may also affect how criminals themselves act. In the year 2000, when CSI premiered, 46.9% of all rape cases in the United States were resolved by police. By 2005, the rate had fallen to 41.3%. Some investigators attributed this decline to the CSI effect, as crime shows often inadvertently explain in detail how criminals can conceal or destroy evidence.
But back to how this affects this case. Look, as we know, our legal system demands proof beyond a reasonable doubt before we can convict. And the jurors see these types of scientific tests as, frankly, undeniable proof of guilt, whereas eyewitnesses or potential motives, those can be sometimes imperfect.
There have been multiple studies that say more than 70% of jurors expect scientific evidence like DNA in murder or rape prosecutions.
And really, it has done extraordinary work in terms of people being released from prison because the DNA testing obviously proved their innocence, despite the fact that they had been convicted. So when you think about it, it's not surprising that Idaho prosecutors have put a ton of weight into the DNA elements of this case.
If this does go to trial, it's safe to assume that prosecutors will have to show that Bryan Kohberger was in the house and his DNA was all over the crime scene where Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan were killed. The question is, though, is that going to be an impossible task?
More on that next time. For more information on the case and relevant photos,
Let me put the banner down here. That way you could see me again. But that's the end of the podcast there. I do have a couple more, and I'll play them throughout the week this week because I didn't realize that they were going to be. I didn't realize that there was going to be two more like that because I thought that they were done until the trial started, but apparently they're not. I didn't realize I was wearing my glasses for that whole time also. But I'm going to go ahead and put it more to get its more updates. Let me try that again. Didn't talk for a while, and now I can't talk. I'm going to share this other article and talk about the newer updates that come out since I was not here I wasn't in my studio doing lives when the 48 Hours episode and stuff aired on that Saturday. I think it was Saturday. It would have been the 16th, I believe. Also, if you guys do want to watch the 48 Hours episode, I might put it on my page. I don't know. I'm still debating on that because they might get me this time. They didn't get me last time, but they might. But you can go, I believe it's on 48hours.com and you can watch it there. Or just type in on Google 48 Hours, Idaho 4, murders or something, and it'll pull up for you if you did want to see that. Because I usually can get it to you guys. And I know a lot of people in other countries, they don't have access to that. So I don't know if you would be able to do that through a VPN, or I don't know if that does that or not, or if you'd be able to get it. But hopefully you can. So if you guys don't mind just hitting the like button, it does help my channel. I'm going to go ahead and read through this article that came out in People magazine. It came out the other day, and we'll talk about it. And I want your thoughts and your if you guys watched the 48 Hours episode, let me know what you guys thought of it in the chat. Because I watched it actually on the airplane on the way back from California. It was super late at night, and we were bound and determined to get the episode to play. I was like, buy me the internet. So Vincent got me the internet or whatever. And then I was like, crap, I've got to sign up for all this stuff. So I was signing up, and I was like, I'm getting this episode because I wanted to play it to see what it was about so I could talk to you guys about it. If we weren't able to, stream it on the channel. So Christy and Steve Gonzalez, the parents of slain University of Idaho student Kaylee Gonzalez, are speaking out about what they believe happened the night their daughter was tragically killed at an off-campus apartment with 3 others. It says, there's evidence to show that she was awakened and tried to get out of that situation, Steve Gonzalez says in a CBS News report announcing Saturday's 48 Hours episode titled The Night of the Idaho Murders, which focused on the case that shocked the nation. Kaylee, 21, was stabbed to death alongside Madison Mogan, 21, Xana Kernodle, 20, and Kernodle's boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, 20, in an off-campus apartment in Moscow, Idaho on November 13th, 2022. 2 additional roommates were home during the attack but were unharmed and ruled out as suspects. Authorities previously said that Mogan and Kaylee were found dead in the same bedroom on the 3rd floor of the home. According to Steve, who cites the coroner, the killer most likely targeted Mogan first and then attacked Kaylee, per CBS News. Kaylee's mother, Christy, adds that she believes her daughter tried to escape, but it was difficult due to the way the bed was arranged in the room. The bed was up against the wall. The headboard was touching the wall, and the left side of the bed was touching the wall. And we believe that Maddie was on the outside. Kaylee was on the inside. She explains to CBS correspondent Peter Van Sant, the way the bed was set up, she was trapped. Now, I've always thought that she was on the inside. Did anyone think that, like, if you're looking in at the bed, I could maybe pull it up. That website has not been working forever. That one that had the 3D animation, like some of it's working, but not all of it. Let's see if it's back. Nope, it's still not, but we can still see the bed. So if you're looking in, like, you come into the room, this is the door to the left side here. Like, I always assumed that Kaylee was on the inside and Maddie was on the outside based on what I thought happened that night. And I don't know why, but I just thought that's how they slept. So I didn't know so when I heard that part of it, it wasn't like, that wasn't shocking to me because I thought that she was on the inside, and she would have thought, because she probably was, to me, I think she came in that bedroom. I don't think she was sleeping in there. That's just my personal opinion. But if she was sleeping in there, then she would have woken up to Maddie probably being attacked first, because that would be the easiest person to get to first. If you come around the bed, I don't think you would like start stabbing from this position, like, straight ahead. Speaking of which, I didn't get my video up today about the knife, the K-bar knife, but me and Vincent, we did go into a mall and we got to see a K-bar for like the first time. We got to hold it. They had all kinds of knives. This was like a huge place. It was like just in the middle of the mall, and it was a knife store. It's only in California. But the K-bar knife, everyone was saying like it was like a heavy knife and it had a lot of weight to it and this, that, and the other. It's not very heavy to me. It was a lot lighter than I thought it was. I mean, a lot lighter. Now, the sheath for the knife was a lot larger than I thought. I thought that sheath was like smaller for some reason, but it's big. That buckle, that button is big. And it is hard to kind of unbuckle it and buckle it back. It's not extremely hard. It's not as hard as I thought it would be either there. But I mean, it does have a little bit of pull to it. See, I think, Pam, that she heard something and she got up and then she put Murphy away and then shut the door. But that could be it too. Yeah, she could have been taken in there. Because I would explain, Murphy being out of the way, no blood, nothing on Murphy to me. But, I don't know. And I bet you he probably got the fur being in this room. Because I'm sure Murphy was in that bed just as much as, the girls were. And I don't think that Kaylee would go to sleep without her dog. I don't see that, I don't know. They probably just went into Maddie's room because maybe because Maddie was like, she was maybe, it looks in the video like Maddie was a little bit more intoxicated than Kaylee. We don't really know for sure. One could just be, able to stand up on their feet a little bit better. But the way that it looks in the grub truck video, it does look like that. But I think that maybe Maddie wasn't feeling good and they slept over there. Maybe Kaylee was like, we're going to sleep in your room so you don't get sick in mine or something, like along those lines. So, yeah. Oh, when Christy said in the 48 Hours episode, and we'll go back to that article, she says, like, how can people be outside playing and when her daughter's dead? And when I heard that, like, that got me because I felt the same way about like people after my dad was killed in a car accident. It was it's completely different than, stabbed in the middle of the night, but it's still extremely hard to go through that kind of thing where, someone's just ripped from your life and, you just you want the whole world to stop because you feel like it should. And why isn't it? And that really made me feel so bad. The Christies also, it's crazy. I was on fire on this channel. This is a while back. This is a while back. And I was ranting about something, or I wanted to. That's what I was going to do. I was getting ready to come on and rant about something. I was like so mad about something in Idaho 4. You know how it's been in this case, the ups and downs. And we watched an interview with Christy and Steve. And Christy was, I don't even know which interview it was, but she was just being a mom and she was just being super sweet. And it really calmed me down, like listening to her. And I was like, wow, she's making me more calm. And I'm not even her daughter. And I didn't end up getting upset. I forget what it was too. I don't even remember, but something that wasn't important. See, it says that Christy theorized that the killer may have been surprised to see the girls together in the same bed. According to CBS News, Kernodle's father believes his daughter fought back as well. I believe so, Jeffrey Kernodle tells Van Sant. It's upsetting to think about. Kernodle's sister, who is speaking out for the first time in the 48-hour special, adds she doesn't know why the murders happened and wish there were answers. All four of them were just such great people and made such an impact on the lives around them, Jasmine Kernodle said per the outlet. Now, I know that I heard someone say that Xana didn't see her dad for Parents Weekend for Washington State, but she would have seen him that weekend. She would have seen him the weekend before she passed away because he fixed the lock on her door, and that's the week of Parents Week for Washington State, I believe. Like the first week of November. So I can't remember where I heard that though, and I was like, that's not right. So it says on December 30th, 2022, nearly 2 months after the murders, authorities arrested 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger in Pennsylvania and identified him as the prime suspect. Kohberger faces 4 counts of first-degree M and 1 count of burglary in connection with the killings. According to the probable cause affidavit, previously reviewed by People, DNA and cell phone pings link Kohberger to the crime scene. A motive for the killing has not been released. There's Kohberger there. Kohberger, who was a PhD student at Washington State University studying criminal justice and criminology at the time of the murders, previously had a DNA sample taken that had allegedly matched DNA found on the sheath of a knife that was left at the crime scene. A knife sheath was found at the crime scene, but the murder weapon has yet to be recovered. Washington State University, which is in Pullman, Washington, is roughly 8 miles away from the residence in Moscow, Idaho, where the 4 students were killed. After being indicted by a grand jury in May, Kohberger stood silent in court as the judge entered his not guilty plea for him at the time, as previously reported by People. Kohberger's family told People months before that they had fully cooperated with law enforcement agencies in an attempt to seek the truth and promote his presumption of innocence rather than judge unknown facts and make erroneous assumptions. I would be speaking out. Kohberger has since waived his right to a speedy trial, which was initially set to begin on October 2nd. A new date for Kohberger's trial has not been set as it has been delayed indefinitely. Kohberger's defense attorney, Ann Taylor, said previously that defense needed more time to present their case. Per ABC News, Kaylee's parents, according to CBS News, believe Kohberger is guilty and are eager to face him when the trial begins, whenever that may be. He is going to feel all of us staring at the back of his head, Christy says, and he knows what he did to our daughter. Feel you there, Christy. Feel you there. Like, I would be there too. Now, do we think Ohio won? I was going to say that they're going to pull something out of their butt because they usually always do. It's Ohio State. I forget what I was going to say now that we're talking about Ohio State. Go Bucks. Yeah, he said. That's funny. They usually do pull something out. I don't know how they do that. I don't know how Ohio State does that. I wish I would have said that now because I really was going to say it because they give them time, I always say, and it's literally be 2 seconds left in the game. And I'm like, just give them time. They'll do something. Now I don't know if you guys have heard anything and you have any questions or, about anything that's going on in the Kohberger saga in the Idaho 4 case. I don't even know what we call it anymore at this point. But I do have a little video to show you that kind of shows a little bit of the CBS stuff too. I forgot I had that. It's a little 4-minute video. So we'll watch this here and we'll talk about it. This is going to have their interview. And I think that Steve says on here too that he believes that Bryan brought a kit with him, a K kit, KILL kit. And man, do we want to give him that much credit? Did he really do that much? Was he really that extra? I mean, he took his phone with him, and then he brought it the next day. Like I'm just still trying to get my head wrapped around it. Because I think of like little things all the time. He is okay. So he thinks he's smart enough. Like he's like, I'm going to turn my phone off when I leave, and then turn it back on when I come home. But he goes back to the crime scene at 9:12 the next day, is in the neighborhood, and he has his phone on, like just cruising around with his phone turned on. Like he didn't turn it back off. Was he afraid to do that and be like, okay, maybe if I turn it off too much, that'll like trigger something? I don't know. You did? You found it on your phone? Good, Alicia. Yeah, it really is a kill kit. I mean, I would think they would be like, oh, I have a picture, and you know what? I probably won't be able to find it right now because it's been a while. But no, you know what? I probably could. I wonder if I could find it. We were in, I'll just tell you about it. I'll find it and I'll post it on the community tab. We were in Lowe's like few weeks ago getting paint. And we're walking down the aisle, and on the end of the aisle cap, it has like outerwear. So it's complete outerwear, like for you to wear over your garments. And it has like the hood that you can like pull, and it like comes around your face. So, you know, like it's really tight around your face. And then it had on the bottom, if you look down, it had booty covers. And I was like, are you kidding? I said, Kohberger just shopped the aisle, like aisle 6 at Lowe's. Like it really was like that. It was like booties, and then like the if you were to wear something over your clothes. I don't know. Personally, I think he probably threw on some Dickie coveralls or something. Yeah, I don't think that he had like anything. Yeah. And if he did have something with him, let's say like a bag, the only kind of bag I could think of would be one of those little sling bags. You know, those really small ones that you can barely see the little straps. Like if you're like bigger person, you know, you really can't see them. Like it would have to be like a knapsack. Other than that, yeah, not Bethany, but Dylan didn't see anything in his hands. No, he probably went to Walmart. Kelly B, that's great. That's the comment for the night. I was just saying that earlier. I said everyone goes to Walmart after they're done. I said they buy their suitcases there, or they buy their cleaning supplies there. But we think our dude went to Albertsons maybe to do all that. We don't know. We don't know where he went. But we'll play this here, and we'll talk about it.
She was trapped. She was trapped. Trapped. That's how the mother of Idaho murder victim Kaylee Gonsalves describes how her daughter died in a new interview about the case, as prosecutors and defense attorneys asked to close an upcoming hearing to the public.
So this notion that the state and the defense can get together to keep cameras out is ill-founded. Let's just put it that way.
Thanks for joining us here on Law and Crime. I'm Anjanette Levy. Kaylee Gonsalves' parents have revealed new details they say they learned from the coroner about how their daughter died. Kaylee Gonsalves, her best friend, Maddie Mogan, their roommate, Xana Kernodle, and Kernodle's boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, were all stabbed to death in a house near the University of Idaho campus last November. The case has captured the attention of people around the world. Bryan Kohberger, a Washington State University PhD student, has pleaded not guilty to the murders. In an episode of 48 Hours, Kaylee Gonsalves' parents said the county coroner told them that Maddie Mogan was killed first. Kaylee was killed second. She was sleeping in the bed with her best friend.
Yeah, there's evidence to show that she awakened and tried to get out of that situation.
The new information comes as Bryan Kohberger is due back in court this week. His lawyers are asking Judge John Judge to dismiss the indictment. They claim the grand jurors were biased and that mistakes were made in the process. But mystery still surrounds some of the specific claims because the motion is sealed. Now the defense and the prosecution have filed paperwork agreeing to close the hearing to the public. But there's one problem with that, according to First Amendment lawyer Jack Reiner.
Well, I think that the idea that the defense and the state can get together and close a hearing just by their own agreement is just simply not the case. There are other stakeholders, there are other people with interest, including the families who is, from my reading, there's a desire that the cameras be in the courtroom by at least some families of the victims. The other stakeholder, obviously, is the public, and the public is represented by the media
Griner has argued on behalf of media outlets in courts for years. In fact, he was part of a coalition that included Law and Crime during a high-profile trial in Ohio last year. To close a courtroom, the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press says the judge must hold a hearing on the need for secrecy and allow the media and others to argue against closure. It's a rule from the U.S. Supreme Court. Closing courtrooms is rare in criminal cases.
It is a huge outlier. The idea of closing the courtroom entirely, that the public can't come in for any purpose, is separate and apart from having cameras in the courtroom. That there has to be a compelling need for the closure and that there are no less restrictive means. So it's up to the state and the defense, I guess, since they both want the hearing closed, to come up to articulate a compelling need for the closure. There's nothing in the stipulated motion that articulates a compelling need to close this proceeding, and there's certainly no suggestion of any less restrictive means. So the motion on its face is really defective, and if the court were to close this proceeding entirely without a hearing, that would be automatically subject to appellate review, that the media coalition, I'm sure, would go to the appellate level in Idaho and seek what would be a writ of mandamus to ensure that the court be open during these proceedings.
The issue of having cameras in the courtroom for the trial is a separate issue. Media outlets, including Law and Crime, have argued to keep cameras in the courtroom during the trial. Griner has argued on behalf of many media outlets many times to keep cameras in the courtroom.
Public ought to know about what's happening at a mass murder, a trial of an alleged mass murderer, and the more the public knows, the better for everybody involved.
Judge has not yet made a decision on the issue of cameras in the courtroom. Whether he will allow this week's hearing to be closed to the public is not yet clear.
Well, we know the first half of, so now we know. The first half of court is going to be closed because they're going to be talking about the grand jury, like more of the, I think, like information that, can't be to the public. And that's why they're keeping it closed. I think if it was any case, it would be closed, just because they're talking about the grand jury, and that's usually secret. But the second half of the court, motions will be heard, and it'll be open court. So everybody will be allowed in, I guess, probably like after lunch. So for the afternoon session. So cameras are going to be in for that one. And he will be there. And that's going to be October 26th instead of it was supposed to be on Friday. So apparently Brian Enton has somebody that he knows in a Latah County jail. I don't know who he knows, but it's Brian Enton and I love him. But he went and I guess there was some stuff that was out on the internet about Bryan Kohberger getting like special treatment in jail, which I just thought that the iPad was a bit much, but I guess you get those nowadays. I didn't know. But she just kind of he has an interview and just kind of settles what's been going on in jail with Bryan Kohberger, which I couldn't imagine being in jail that long. Oh, wow. It's been almost a year. It'll like the 30th of, we'll be ringing in the new year and he'll be ringing in his first year in jail. Wow. It's a long time to be in jail. Especially if you're going to be in there before, wait until trial. I mean, I don't know how long it's going to be until the trial is, because I've only known of cases, I've only been following cases, it seems like, that happened right before COVID, within the few years before COVID did. So they were all pushed back because of COVID. So it took them 4 or 5 years to go to trial. I don't think it's going to take that long for this case to go to trial. But I do think it's going to be a while, maybe a year or so, maybe 2. I don't think it's going to be much longer than that. I think that you're just going to, I think that even as Bryan Kohberger is sitting there in jail, he's going to want to just get it over with at some point. You don't want to just be sitting there in jail waiting for just ever, I guess. I wouldn't. I'd rather be sent to prison so I can get me some good ramen and a fresh pair of socks. That's just me. Yes, and that's what I was gonna say, Kaylee, you're okay. So I was so mad. I was like, we better not get recordings in this case, and blah blah blah. And at this point, recordings is fine with me. I take that back before when I said I want it more than recordings. I will do the visual for you. I will be the judge, I will be the prosecutor, and I will be the defense. And that would be a good show. And I'll even be the people in the gallery if I can see them. So we'll I'm gonna play this for you guys because I thought it was pretty entertaining. And then we'll close out the live for the night. And thank you guys all for being here. I really appreciate it.
So you can imagine my surprise waking up to hear that Bryan Kohberger's getting special treatment in the Latah County Jail, because I thought, no, he ain't. At least not that I've seen, right? I kind of have been following every single moment of his life in that jail, and none of it seems special. So, of course, Brian Entin would get to the bottom of it. Of course he would. All these reports out there that say he's got a special computer, that he's getting special meals, that he's allowed to wear fancy suits. Brian, what? I'm not so sure that's really true, is it?
Yeah, so these reports came out this morning, and I've learned that most of it is not true, at least according to my sources. I have learned that he is using an older computer that is not connected to the internet. It is the same older computer that all the inmates get to use. And the only thing he can do on it, since it's not connected to the internet, is he can put a thumb drive into the computer that has his court documents on the thumb drive. He can review the documents, he can make comments, he can resave to the thumb drive, and then he can give that thumb drive back to his lawyer. Again, that's something that all the inmates in the Latah County Jail get to do, according to my sources. As for all this talk about the vegan meal, I am told it is just rice and beans. That's it, rice and beans, and that anyone else in the jail can have rice and beans also, if that's what they want.
Okay, because you and I have been talking at length since January about vegan meal options. We got the menu back then. You reported back then it was rice and beans. So why would anybody start to think that having a vegan meal was special? You can have a kosher meal, you can have a halal meal, you can have a vegan meal. It's all part of the prison system. It's not special, it's not new. Do you have any idea why all of a sudden someone started to think that vegan was special?
Well, look, I think that it's troubling what Bryan Kohberger is accused of. You see him come into court in the suit. You hear vegan meal. You hear that there's a computer involved. It makes people mad, and I understand that based on what he's charged with. You don't want to think about him having some kind of, privileged time in jail. But when you really dig into the facts, I mean, it's rice and beans, and it's an old computer that every single inmate gets to use just to plug the thumb drive in and read the court docs.
So here's something else. The picture that's in the middle of the screen between us. This has bothered me since day one, watching him walk in and out of the courtroom in the Latah County Courthouse / jailhouse. It's all the same building. He has a fancy suit on each time. He does not walk in and out of that court in jailhouse orange, which every pretrial hearing typically is. There's no jury present. So you're not, tainting a jury by watching him walk in and out in an orange, jumpsuit. They give him this suit, and I've been trying to figure out why.
Yeah, I think there's 5 suits that he has now. Again, I understand why that's bothersome to the victims' families. I mean, it's weird. Even when I've been in court, you see him come in the suit. There's no shackles. Basically, the defense has asked the judge, and the judge is allowing it. They're worried that if, people see him on TV in the prison uniform, if it could possibly taint the potential jury pool. It's actually interesting. I didn't fully realize it, but Lori Vallow was also able to do that. Chad Daybell, Murdoch also, even before the trial. So apparently with some of these high-profile cases, this has kind of become a common trend lately.
Well, and with other ones, we've seen them shuffle in shackles and shuffle out in shackles. So I think it's just, case by case basis. So I can see how some might think that that's special treatment. I knew you would get to the bottom of it all, Brian Entin. You know how much I love having you on the show.
It's always good to see you, Ashley. Yeah, I can see the perception. You heard vegan, computer, but I think when you find out the real story there, it's not special at all.
It's not so special, but you are. So thank you, Brian Enton. And
Oh,
thank
you. You're
you,
special,
everyone, for joining. Oh, look at him. I love him to pieces. Thank you for watching.
He's the cutest, isn't he, Brian Enton? Aw, she said, but you're special. And he smiled all big. He's the sweetest. He really is. He was at CrimeCon. They all are. I'm like, what? Everyone's at CrimeCon but us. Us and 221 people. So why aren't we there? We could have all rallied together, got us a bus or a 200, that many people. We could probably get us a jet. What are we talking about? We'd be flying there in style. I do want to end the live on this note though, because I almost forgot this, and this is like something you cannot forget. It's just one thing you cannot forget. So if you guys don't know who this is, which I'm sure you all do, this is JJ Vallow. Now Joshua, he was taken from his family. We're not going to call his mother his family because that's not who we call his family. He was taken from his grandparents. Today from back in 2019. So it's been a few years. It's been a long time. She put it on here today. I wanted to share it with you guys. And I just thought it was very sweet. She put it on Twitter. And his favorite song was Queen, We Will Rock You. So make sure if you're not listening to that tonight, you haven't listened to it yet, because you know it is a good song. Listen to it. It's a really good song. You know, that's probably what he's listening to right now. So I saw that, and I saw that this morning, and it just broke my heart. Really breaks my heart when they're that little, you know. He just, man, they didn't deserve that. I think that Letitia and Lori should share a jail cell, them two together. They'd be beautiful together. But I do have another podcast to play for you guys on our next live when we do over Idaho. And then we will, tomorrow, I think we're going to do Long Island. Go back to that. And I think there's like a documentary or something. I saw something and there's some new updates. So we'll cover that on the channel tomorrow. And we'll probably do the live maybe a little bit earlier, since I've been a little bit later the last couple of nights. Really? The Vandals beat number 4 in the FCS today. Wow. Yes. Next year, the Titans will have a booth at CrimeCon. Yep. You best believe it. I'll be like, everybody will be wearing some shirts say TitaniumBuilt or something, or, you know, something cute. Actually, there'll be something funny, because I think that we could think of some funny things to put on there. Put on some shirts. We've got some good one-liners. But thank you guys all for being here tonight. I appreciate it so much. I will see you guys all tomorrow. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe on your way out. If you're watching on a replay, #replay in the comments below. If you'd like, leave me a comment after the live in the comment section. It does help the channel, and I love to hear from you guys. So I will see you guys all tomorrow. Have a good evening, and bye, guys.